The Pope and Young Club wants to welcome you as we rally together to ensure our bow hunting opportunities for today and tomorrow. You've come to the podcast that believes in preserving, protecting, and promoting the passion for bow hunting. Join us as we strive to be the voice of today's bow hunter. This is the Pope and Young Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pope and Young Podcast. Jason Roundsville here, joined as always by my co-host Dylan Ray. We have with us today, we have Laden Force, who is the publisher of North American Whitetail magazine. He is also the producer and host of North American Whitetail Television. Laden, thanks for being here, man.
Oh, man, thanks for having me, Jason. I really appreciate you and Dylan inviting me on. We've been talking about this here for a couple of years, and it just seems like we always have busy schedules. We're all running different directions, and it's hard to kind of catch up. Yeah. So to have the opportunity to sit here with you guys today and the invite, man, I'm really excited.
So are we. We like to always like to hear our fellow hunters out there, and it's so crazy because a lot of you guys. Now, where are you based out of?
So I'm based out of Missouri, Northeast Missouri.
Okay.
Actually.
And so it's for me, I'm on the West Coast. So for us, like bow stuff, a lot of our stuff is winding down. It's, it ended last weekend, rifle season start this weekend. And back there, you guys are a lot of you. I mean, there's been some stuff going, but most of you are just getting ratcheted up into full speed ahead right now.
For sure. Yeah. It's a busy time of year. You know, we've had a lot of these early whitetail seasons kick in September 1 and September 15. We're the 15th here in Missouri. And because of my co-host on the TV show or editor-in-chief here at North American Whitetail, Haynes Shelton, deciding to get married the first week of September this year, our whole group's kind of like
dumb.
I know.
What? Why would you do that?
Well, you know, and the funny thing is he's a big bow hunter too, man, you know, and so we usually.
No, he's not.
Yeah. Well,
no, he's not.
You know how it is, man. When we find that right girl, sometimes they can talk us into things, and they have birthdays on the September 3rd and 4th. I hope
if you find the right girl, if you're listening to this show, if you find the right girl, she will understand scheduling your wedding around hunting season. She will, if she's the right girl, like you're saying, she will understand. She'll be like, yeah. So
I've got one word. I've got one worse than that. Laden, you probably know the article, but a few years ago they put out an article and it was like the top 10 biggest known big buck killers in the world, you know, and if you could pick one day to hunt, what would it be? Every single one of them fell between October 31st and like November 14th.
Right. Yep.
Four of them said November 7th. And I had a kid born on November 7th.
Oh, man. Oh.
It was horrible. I was literally sitting in the hospital. I was sitting in the hospital and I got like 6 pictures of giants that my friends had killed. And I'm like, you guys suck.
Oh man. Yeah, you got to be careful. You know, I always get that warning text early in the year that says, you know, remember when the rut falls. And, you know,
it's 9 months from Valentine's Day. I can tell you that.
There you go. Yeah, I can tell you that I've got 2 boys that fell in the spring between January and March, late January and March, and then the third one I had no say in, and it was one of those moments. So he ended up being born late September. We just celebrated his birthday here this last week. So. But that, you know, you can get in the early openers, you can get in most of elk season, and then you can kind of transition there. So it's the last week of September is not horrible. But I know if Haynes is listening, he'd probably end up pointing the finger back at me because we were really busy. You know, we've been doing a lot of stuff with the brand over the last 18, 24 months. And, you know, a lot of that hard work comes during, those months of really March to June, because that's kind of our quiet time, you know, if there is a such thing here in today's content generation marketplace. And we've been working really hard, and he himself has dug in so hard for the brand. And I think there were a couple of wedding dates that might have got pushed back that were in the spring due to maybe some work obligations. So he may turn around and say, well, man, you forced me to get married on our birthday, which was September 3rd and 4th. But either way, we went out, and my family and I went out and joined him, and it was a beautiful wedding. I'm happy for the both of them. And I guess we'll always have something to remember Haynes by as the rest of us are out hunting, whatever it might be, the first week of September in the future, and he's on his anniversary. So.
Yeah. Well, good for him. Does she like to bow hunt?
Yeah. If she doesn't, I think she's going. I think Maddie.
Let's hope so.
Hey, it happened.
Yeah.
It happened for Lee and Tiffany. Remember, they told us that their anniversary was like what? Always during their mule deer hunt or something. Yeah.
Always Utah mule deer. So, they seem to be doing great.
Yeah, they're all right.
Yeah, well, if I remember right, I think they had bows in their wedding pictures, almost as if they were walking out the door to go on a bow hunt themselves after the wedding. So,
which knowing them, they probably were. They're hunting all the time.
Oh yeah. They're bow hunting all the time for sure.
So, well, that's great. Well, Laden, tell folks. I'm sure most of our listeners and members know all about North American Whitetail, but maybe for the two that don't, tell us about what you're doing with the magazine, the TV show. Give us the kind of the rundown on what you guys do over there.
Yeah,
it's
for
exciting.
Sure. Well, man, it's a privilege to work with this brand, such a a legacy brand, much like Pope and Young and the club. This brand far supersedes me even being born, actually, by about 2 years. We had our 40th anniversary this year. We're celebrating it with our October issue here at North American Whitetail. We've got a couple great issues in our September and October issues. We made a 2-part campaign that celebrated the history of North American Whitetail, who's been a part of it, some of the deer that have been, milestones that we've covered over the years. But really, this brand has been focused. It was founded in '82 as a magazine by some folks like David Morris, maybe that you're familiar with, or Gordon Whittington from the beginning. Gordon Whittington is still, he retired last year as our editor-in-chief after 36 and a half years, but he's still an emeritus or in the emeritus status, which means he's, kind of a consultant for the brand and still works and writes for us with regularity, but founded on the idea of being the reporting source on large deer that have been harvested across North America, whitetail specifically, of course. And then also really prided ourselves on land management. We have a deep rooting of land management, education, research, and development. We have, over 3 decades of research and development down at the Institute there with Dr. James Kroll at Stephen F. Austin. And then also the big thing that comes as pillar number 3 is how-to and gear over the years. Over 40 years, there's a lot of how-to that comes from folks like Gordon or Dr. Kroll or David Morris or Greg Miller. You go down the list of all these great writers and whitetail hunting influencers and bow hunters. A lot of them, bow hunters that have really shaped, the thought process and skill sets of whitetail hunters across North America. And it's been just a great delivery over the years, 4 decades. Like I said, it evolved into TV 20 years ago, which we're filming our 20th.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. 2003 will be our 20th broadcast season, which means they started filming in 2002. So we're filming our 20th season this fall. And it's distributed on Outdoor Channel and Sportsman's Channel both now. And that has a lot to do with who owns us. We're owned by the Outdoor Sportsman Group, which includes other brands like Bowhunter Magazine and Peterson's Bow Hunting and Peterson's Hunting, In Fisherman, Game and Fish, Guns and Ammo. So we're part of a pretty neat group of brands that are much like ourselves, that have been built over decades and really built this great foundation around, providing education. Not so much entertainment. There's some entertainment in there, but a lot of it's just founded around education and awareness of what's going on in, each of those little niche subjects or categories of outdoorsmen. So it's pretty neat. And I guess, we're really kind of starting to turn the corner into the next generation of North American whitetail. And, now that we've had linear and we've had the magazine, we're really looking at digital and employed a big campaign last year that was really founded around breaking news bucks, which is the digital extension of what we've done for 40 years, which is big buck coverage. Yeah. And man, it has just the audience and the marketplace, man, this community of bow hunters and whitetail hunters, deer hunters in general has just really embraced it. And we've seen such big growth, and we're already 46% year to date above where we were with that digital growth last year, which was a record year for us after 40 years. So we got a great team of young guys. We've got the encouragement and wisdom and of, guys like Gordon and Dr. Kroll right there behind us, pushing and helping and really kind of trying to turn that page into what North American Whitetail will be for hopefully the next 4 generations.
Nice. That's exciting. So if you had to pick one story from the last year, which one are you going to pick? What would you tell us about?
Oh man, there are so many. We actually just worked with you guys. It's a real neat story that we just published in our October issue, Nicole Miller, which you guys are, I believe are going to speak with Nicole as well here before too long. But a gal killed what we believe is the largest typical, and we're working to confirm that officially with you all, but the largest typical taken by vertical bow by a female. And it somehow or another kind of floated under the radar, which is unbelievable. You think about a deer that goes over 190 inches typical from the state of Ohio, and it really, like, people knew about it, but it just didn't register that, hey, this is a potential, world record for female hunter taken typical whitetail deer. And so I'm pretty excited about that story and it hitting the marketplace here right now. It's on newsstand, and Nicole's been a great gal to work with our staff, and Haynes and Blake have had more attachment and more communication with her. But every time I've talked to her, man, she's a bow hunter, and she is just a deer hunter, and she's just as gritty as anybody, And so I always think it's neat that, we kind of break beyond any barriers or thought processes that folks might have as to what a whitetail hunter is or what a bow hunter is, and see a gal like Nicole have such success and hit such a neat milestone with that deer particularly. So I'm pretty excited about that one as far as this year goes.
That's I was just talking to Tam, our records director, I think it was yesterday, about that. And he was trying to do some research, because we don't keep records. Like we're just a records organization. You want to talk about the most equal opportunity in the world? It's like, we have one record book. It's for everybody. We don't care how tall you are, what gender you are, what color. We don't care. There's one record book. We're completely non-biased. And so Tim was telling me, he's like, I'm looking through the records. We don't keep track of gender. So he's like, I'm trying to read through. He says some of them are, like very, obvious. Like Nicole is typically a lady's name, but he says, what about Corey or Tony? And I'm like, dude, I don't know how you do that. Because now all of a sudden we're pulling, like, we're going back to Chatfield, pulling files out of these file cabinets to look at the field photos, just to see
what you can pull. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Haynes talked about that after getting to chat with you guys. When he first made the discovery, and he and Gordon were talking about it, he tabled Haynes, and kudos to him. And it really speaks to how well, even at the age of 28, he knows the whitetail marketplace. But he's like, man, he started doing the research. He's like, I don't recall, he's been here for about 7 years. He's like, I don't recall 7 years a typical whitetail that's been taken that was that big by vertical bow by a lady. And so then he started digging around some more, and he's like, well, it's for sure an Ohio record, and reached out to you guys. And he was talking about that specifically. The conversation is like, well, there's the Tonys, and it, like, to your point. It's hard to tell, because some of the earliest deer taken, over a century ago, there's really, you don't know for sure. It's just a name and a score, some of these. But it's pretty neat either way.
So it is. So it's been neat to see that process kind of play out. So it's now what does your hunting look like this year? Have you been out?
So I have. I'm hunting Kansas. The week after I got back from Haynes's wedding, I got to go over and hunt Kansas, and we got a lease together. Our team here at North American Whitetail, and we're as we kind of look at turning the page, we're trying to look at ways that hey, let's just face it. The perception of the whitetail hunter out there is that they all hunt 5,000 acres in the Midwest, and they've got the best food plots and all this great stuff and every advantage they need to, or they go hunt with an outfitter. And the outfitter puts them in the stand and they're just a trigger man, kind of thing. And each one of our team members, look, we respect whatever you're doing from a standpoint of bow hunting, as long as it is ethical and legal. Like, hey, we embrace you, man, because we need all of our hunters today, in this marketplace. And we don't draw any lines. We celebrate all of you and really celebrate the whitetail deer. And we just want to make sure that, we're doing our best as a team and as a brand to get out and experience the different things. But most of us guys here grew up, blue collar, hardworking families, farm kids. I was a farm kid in Northeast Missouri. Haynes's dad and grandpa have a third generation construction business there in the Carolinas. And Blake comes from a family of contractors. So we grew up, with little farms or sometimes bigger pieces of ground that we got to go in and manage. And we really hadn't done that as a team yet on one specific property where we went in from start to finish, got a lease like any other guy would do in another state, started from the ground up, found ways to do a little bit of weed management, weed control, timber management, water management, planted food plots, got stands hung, blinds placed, and really allows for us to kind of go through the process and document it. So, that's how we like to hunt. Number one, it's how we were raised hunting. But then number two, it just allows for people to kind of build an opinion of us that is maybe not so slighted one direction, that typical perception of the TV guys. But
yeah, so you're going to go earn it.
Oh yeah, we earned it, man. And we're still earning it. And went over and hunted that Kansas lease. And I got on a deer that, we had a couple pictures of him in July. He's a big 9-pointer, and our thoughts are that he'll be 160 inches plus. It's the biggest 9-pointer I've ever hunted in the field, 5x4. And got in on him and hunted the first 3 days. Never had an experience. Went to the other side of the farm to try and actually hunt a couple other deer that had been popping on an alfalfa field. And that guy walked out at 74 yards right behind me, unfortunately, directly downwind. So we had a great experience with him. And then we had a little family thing I had to run back home for. And I haven't been out since. We've had that's been 2 weeks ago. And we've had a lot of stuff going on here at the house. But I'm going to go out for the first time in Missouri tonight, actually. So vertical, gonna hit the woods. And nothing real big here in Missouri this year that I'm chasing, but just some good, solid, mature deer. And man, I love chasing them with my stick and string when they get to that age,
Yeah, and it's we're just talking about this just right before we jumped on, but it's so crazy because you guys are just getting ramped up, and on the West, we're almost done. I mean, our main seasons ended last Sunday, and so it's pretty interesting. One thing I've got to talk about, it's not a whitetail thing, but I spent some time at elk camp this year.
Yeah.
And I had I'm going to ask you, what's one of the weirdest, strangest things that's happened to you either out in the woods or on a hunting trip? I mean, is there something that stands out where you're just like, dude, I heard something that's not right, or I saw something, or this was just so late. What, drop it on us. What's something that happened that was just odd that you're just like, I'm not sure about this?
There's been some weird stuff over the years. I've got a buddy on his way over here, and we're going to shoot some content for the guys at Bowtech in a little bit. And we went on an elk hunt, talking about elk camp. We went on an elk hunt about 3 years ago in Colorado, South Central Colorado, right up on the Continental Divide. And I had a big snowstorm come in on us, and it ended up dropping between 2 and 3 feet. And so most of the areas that we'd hunt, it was in areas as deep as waist high snow. And it really kind of just changed our whole hunt. And we found one basin that had about 12 to 18 inches of snow instead of 3 feet. And so we ended up hiking back up in there and got into some elk, and one of our buddies killed. And then I got real close that night, and we thought, all right, well, we're going to go get all of our camp, hike it back up. It was about, it's about 6 miles back up in there, not real far, but 6 miles, and got everything set. The whole group of us, 5 or 6 of us there. And just weird encounters. Like the whole time we were going up, we ran into a guy that was coming down, and you could just tell he was out of sorts. And I didn't notice it at the time, but he had a quiver full of arrows that were half broken, and apparently one of his cables on his bow were cut, or just about cut. And I just didn't catch it. But then the next group of people came up behind us and they asked us, "Did you see that guy?" And he was just real weird when we talked to him about stuff.
Right.
The guys behind us said, "Well, did you see that guy? And did you hear what happened? That snowstorm came in, he left his whole camp up there, and he came back and a bear had ravaged his whole tent and his bow was in there. And, I saw bears on the way out." And so at one point I turned to my uncle and my cousin that were there hunting with us as well. And I said, do you get the sense that like people just don't want us here? We were hunting national forest ground. I was like, do you get the sense that like the three people we've talked to, every single one of them is like, "Why are you here?" And public ground, but just kind of like, all right, whatever. Maybe we kind of stumbled into a few people's spot. They felt like it was their spot. And we went on ahead, had camp set. Everybody's excited. We saw a few more elk that night and didn't arrow any elk, but that night we all went to bed not too long after dark. We were pretty tuckered out. We'd been down the mountain, back up. And how when you're on the mountain, you're at 11.5, we were about 11.5 there, right next to the Continental Divide, and the air's thin and you're just worn out. And
if you've never been at 11.5, you don't know what that means.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You can't, until you're there and all of a sudden you have to walk up 3 steps and you're like winded because the altitude, you just can't get enough oxygen sometimes. So until you've been there, you just don't know.
No, you don't. And it just wears your butt out, And so we all had a mountain house and had climbed into our tents. And how when you fall asleep because you're worn out, you just fall asleep. You're just out. And those first 30 minutes, man, you're just gone. And I remember being probably 20 minutes into it, and I just heard this blood curdling yell. It's pitch black dark. The moon's not up. I mean, it just blood curdling yell that woke me up out of this dream I was having. And I like one of those moments where, something's wrong, but you can't really figure it out. And you're coming to,
you're not sure where you are. You're like,
oh no, exactly. That's exactly what it was. Yeah. We had no clue. Like I'm in a tent, like what is happening? I'm worn out. And all of a sudden I recognize my buddy, Zach. I recognize his voice and he's like, "Get out of here" again. And at that point in time, like it's starting to register like, oh, that's somebody I know. And he's yelling and like he's yelling because, it's weird. Like there's something threatening going on. And
there is a sense of urgency when somebody yells like that.
Oh man. And most of us had a sidearm at that point in time. So, we had a sidearm and you kind of are feeling around in the dark for it and don't know if you should turn your headlight on or you don't know what to do, at this point in time. And it starts to register. And I hear my uncle in the other tent. Of course, Zach was we had about 5 tents there. We had 5 or 6 of us. And Zach was the only guy that slept on the other side of the fire. Everybody else's tents were in a row right next to each other. Zach's tent was on the other side.
There's always one. Every camp has that one guy that does it.
Yep. And of course it was him, man. And so my uncle and I are coming to, we're kind of the first 2 out of our tent trying to figure out like what's going on. You can hear us unzipping and in all, Zach had fallen asleep like the rest of us and wakes up to huffing in his ear. And he had his head up against the edge of his tent and he could hear the huff in his ear. And he said, I knew immediately once I came to that it was a bear and I just couldn't, he's like, I didn't know what to do because I could feel like that dude breathing in my ear through the tent. And
wow.
He said, so all I did was yelled and punched at the same time. He's kind of laying there. And he said, I just yelled and he said, I made contact with something. And he said, I'm just assuming it's his nose. And he said, you could just hear the most awful, just skirmish of the bear trying to get his feet together and everything and getting out of there. And so that's where we all woke up. And man, I'm telling you, that shook me. I'd never been shook really and really thought that much about being out in the woods. And that night I got shook pretty good. And I don't know that I slept another 5 minutes the rest of the night. And we had a bunch of little camp mice that were running around on all the logs around the camp. Of course, we built a bear fence out of logs and everything we could find around our tents. And all night long, man, you'd hear those mice go scurrying across the branch and your eyes would come back up. But it was a bear. We had snow on the ground. You could see the tracks come right up to the side of his tent, right where he was laying and turn around and run right back down into the woods. And Yeah, there were some aggressive bears there on that side of that mountain. We had one of the other guys had an encounter the next day, and I saw another one. And so they were just I don't know if it was the snow or what it was. I don't know black bears real well yet, but they were a little aggressive right there on that mountain, and that shook us.
I maybe shouldn't tell the story. I had something similar happen, and I thought it was a bear, a wolf. I didn't know what it was, mountain lion, but brush up against my tent, and I punched, and it ran off. And I'm like, man, same deal. Couldn't go back to sleep, and I'm like, dude, what is? It happened again. I could see the shadow brush right up against the side of my tent. And I'd punch again and run off, and I'm like, dude, what is this? So I couldn't sleep all night, and I wake up the next morning and go about my day and making breakfast or whatever, and this lady walks up the road from a camp down the mountain. She says, listen, I have a blind dog, and it happened to have got lost last night. You haven't seen it, have you? And I'm like, well, I didn't see it, but I think
I punched it twice.
I punched it a few times, I think. And we ended up finding it. And like, after I saw it, I'm like, yep, that's exactly what was brushing up against my tent last night. Yep. Dang it.
Oh, yeah. Man. That's cruel. You're mean.
Dude, it was a big old chocolate lab. Like, yeah, I had no idea. And I was just like, golly, it was, yeah. So
Dylan, blind dog puncher. Golly.
Yeah. That's your new Indian name.
I like it.
Blind dog puncher.
I like it.
So I'll tell you what, I had one that happened to me this year, and it wasn't like super spooky. Like I've had, my little brother, he spent a lot of time out in the woods. And so he's literally seen cougars come out of trees onto elk. And, he's walked around, like he came out of the brush one time, walked around his truck, and as he's opening his driver's side door, he looks back to his tailgate, and a cougar walks out behind him and is 6 feet from him. And it's like, and that's through some brush that you can't, this is like reprod stuff. And he's like, that was a little bit weird, but I didn't have anything quite that interesting, but it kind of shook me because it was just so interesting. So Dylan, you might remember this. So last year, I left elk camp, and I helped my buddy. I got a buddy who lets me hunt kind of on the ranch and around the ranch in Eastern Oregon. And so on Monday after the season, I help him pick up blinds and tree stand seat pads and cameras and all this stuff. And then I clear out my camp and I head home. And last year I'm cruising along, and I'm, doing 70 miles an hour, or if there's any law enforcement people listening, 55, not over 55. And I mean, I've got a truckload of stuff because I go in there early and I just leave my camp for the whole season. Then I come and go, on the weekends and stuff. And so, I mean, I've got my truck bed. You couldn't have fit a roll of toilet paper into the canopy. I have a roof rack with ground blinds and pop-up tents and everything on top, and a little trailer pulling the quad. So I mean, I'm loaded down. I'm rolling down the highway. I'm like, I had 6 hours of driving. I'm just trying to get home. And last year, as I was leaving elk camp, middle of the day, 2:00 or whatever, I'm in the middle of National Forest. It's a really good road. It's a paved road. So I'm rolling down, and you look off to the left, and there's this little meadow that's just beautiful. It's just a little beautiful, lush green meadow. And I'm leaving elk camp. I hadn't connected last year, and I'm going along, and here is this beautiful, majestic 6-point bull elk all over there, just with his head up, and he turns around, and I slowed. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that. And I slowed down, and he kind of turns and just walks back into the timber. And I'm like, thanks, brother. I'll see you next year. And it was almost, I viewed that as kind of almost a nod, where it's just like really a cool thing. He's like, hey man, respect. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, all right, you got me this year, but next year. So anyway, that was kind of a neat thing. And we talked about it, I think, even on the podcast, Dylan, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And so so this year, same thing. We clean up all the blinds, get the cameras put away. I load my camp, and I'm hauling down the road. And as I'm going through the same area, I'm just like, dude, I wonder if I can find, I just have to look at that same meadow because it was just so cool. And I'm just like, okay, it wasn't that one. That was too big. And I come around this little corner and I'm like, holy crap. Here's the meadow. I found it. And I'm, driving along at highway speeds and there's no traffic. I'm the only one there. And I'm like, that bull elk is in the same exact meadow, in the same place on the same day as I'm leaving elk camp for the second year in a row. And it really weirded me out because this is public domain. And it just, man, it was one of those things where even now it's, days later and I'm still a little bit rattled. Cause now, like last year, I thought it was a nod. I was like, hey brother, good fencing with you in the woods, and now I'm kind of like, dude, are they mocking me? Are they, is he telling me something? Is this like an omen?
I think you need to see if that meadow's huntable. It sounds like to me.
Oh, it is. It's 100%. Absolutely. But it's like, what are the chances of seeing an elk in the middle of the day?
Yeah.
Big, mature bull, 6-point bull in exactly the same place 2 years in a row to the hour. Yep. I mean, it's just weird. And so stuff like that, because this isn't a 40-acre chunk of ground. This is millions upon millions of acres and hundreds of square miles of wilderness. And then here this guy is. And so for me, I've had a lot of interesting things happen in the woods. I've had some weird ones, but for me, that is in a hunting situation. I got to admit that one kind of rattled me a little bit. I'm like, I don't know what it means. Maybe it means nothing. Maybe it means that, holy crap, I wish you'd have found the meadow and been in there on Sunday instead of driving by it Monday. Maybe that's what it means. But it was year before it was so perfect. And then here it is completely perfect again. Anyway, so that was mine.
That's cool. I like those kind of stories a lot better than bears next to my head at night.
Oh man, I'll tell you, I'm not sure which one's more frustrating because it's like, if a bear is close enough to kill me, I'm close enough to kill him. But here I am, this elk, and it wasn't far. It's not like 300 yards away. This thing's like 65, 70. It's probably a little more. It was probably about 90 yards. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. So that one still has me going. I just can't wrap my head around it. Right. So maybe I need to go find like a shrink or something, or a medicine man or something.
Yeah, work through that one with them.
Yeah. So is that my spirit animal? Maybe Dylan, what if my spirit animal is a big bull elk, not a duck? That would be interesting.
Yeah.
That would be life changing. So anyway, so that's mine. I had to talk about it. And I was telling Dylan, I was like, dude, some of these things, I don't expect people to believe me because it's just so far-fetched, but it's honestly happened. It's legit. So
spend enough time out in the woods and you'll have some of those little omens as well. Little happenings, man.
Yeah.
I think anybody that spent some time out in the woods, especially in bow hunting format, like you're going to have some of those encounters and some of those cool moments that that are just very personal and you wouldn't have them otherwise. But yeah, I'd say there's a lot of bow hunters out there listening right now that can relate to that.
Yeah. And I don't know. I looked at it and I was like, man, this has to mean something. This is good. Last year, I'm like, this is a good sign. This year, I'm like, those buggers are mocking me, man. They're like, 2 years in a row, you didn't get one of us. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So I don't know. It's interesting, but what do you think, Dylan?
Maybe I'm just a boring hunter. I don't get exciting stories. Other than punching blind dogs, I don't know.
Blind dog puncher.
I can't let my mom listen to that. That'll get me in trouble.
See, and that's how you know you may not be in the middle of the wilderness if the blind dog is finding you. It's like, was this at the back somebody's backyard? Where was this?
It was not on a hunt. Like, so I was like at a lake, like camping with my family. But still, it was in bear country. So I thought, like, you have no idea. I mean, there's definitely been mountain lions in the area. Confirmed. It was in the middle of the Arkansas mountains, and so there's mountain lions and bears, and I mean, I had no idea what it was.
Yeah,
but it freaked me out.
See, mountain lions and bears don't. Maybe they should. I don't know. Maybe they freak me out because we had some people. Nice thing is I'm around folks who are coming in from all over the country, to hunt. So you get to interact with them and visit with them, and a lot of these guys are coming in and they're packing their 10 mil Glocks and I'm just like, what and they're talking about this guy, the effectiveness of a 10 millimeter versus a 9 or a 40 or whatever, and I'm like, what's coming after you that you feel like you need a gun for in Eastern Oregon? Okay, maybe a bear, but even a big bear's 300-400 pounds. They're not coming after you or a cougar. And we did have a cat on the place. We got him on camera. And so, but it's like, those cats know when you're walking through the woods, you don't walk like, that's what I told them. I said, if a cat sees me, the way I'm walking, unless I'm stalking something, but when I'm walking in and out of a tree stand or a ground blind or something, I'm not walking like prey. I think a cat can look and say, oh crap, that's the alpha predator. I'm out of here. They're not gonna, they don't want to try you. And so anyway, we had one guy, he actually was in a great spot. He left his ground blind and walked out early because he's like, dude, did you hear those coyotes? Are they coming after us? No, the coyotes are not coming after you. But
yeah, so somebody that's unfamiliar with it can work on their nerves a little bit. There's no doubt about that. But I'll tell you, man, I've only seen one mountain lion in the wild, and definitely won't forget it. They're 100%, the 20x version of your modern house cat. So those things that your little feeble, or not feeble, but your very athletic house cats do, where they jump 4 feet in the air to a spot, or 6 feet in the air that is 6-7 times their height, and you're like, wow, well, that's a 100+ animal, 100 pounds in some cases. On the bigger side, they can do the same. And when you realize that's what they are, you go, wow, all right, I might, for once, you don't necessarily feel as much like an apex predator, right? Because they're such amazing animals. And I've seen some bears do some crazy stuff too. Just speed,
they're so strong.
Oh man. Yeah.
There's not many things, like if I see what it is, it doesn't scare me. Like if I can see the bear, I'm not afraid. If I can see the mountain lion, whatever. If I can see the rattlesnake, whatever. But when you're walking through Texas and you just you're like, oh snap, and you don't see it, that's when I'm terrified. Like when something's there but you can't see it, that's when it's scary.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's
I was,
and those predators like that. I've only seen one mountain lion while I was actively hunting in a tree stand, and yes, I missed him. But you know what? He walked across on a trail at 70, and they never stop. That's the difference. Like if you watch a deer, an elk, or anything else, they take a few steps, they stop, they nibble, they browse. Those predators, they don't stop. They just go. And I saw that cougar was the same thing. He walked across 70 yards, hit this timber line, and came straight down the hill, and he never stopped. And this year I was sitting in my tree stand, and I'm looking there, and sometimes I've got a little computer game on my phone that I'll play, just killing time, trying to stay awake. And so I'm looking down, I'm and literally over the top of my phone, I see movement, and it's not uncommon because of my tree stand. There's a trail that goes kind of at the bottom. So I'll have deer or occasionally elk or something walk right literally within inches of my ladder. And I looked down, it was a bobcat. And this thing, sure enough, man, walked all the way across this meadow, up into the timber on the other side, never stopped, and completely silent. And I mean, as much as a deer or an elk can be quiet, this thing wasn't quiet. It was silent. And it's, last year I spent some time in the woods, and it was like at first, like earlier, you're talking about the mice and the squirrels. You're like, oh, I hear noise. And then you realize, oh no, deer aren't that noisy. It's got to be a squirrel.
Yeah.
So what's, so are you, if you had to pick one, Laden, this fall, what's a hunt that you're maybe the most excited about? Is there one where you're just like, I cannot wait to get here?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of them. I'm kind of going to do the Plain State tour this year. So I've got Kansas tag, Nebraska tag, South Dakota, North Dakota tag, and then I got an informal invite to maybe go to Saskatchewan for the first time and hunt deer. And so that'd be my first deer hunt north of the border, which I'd be really excited about. And the guy that invited me, I'd be even more excited about going with. I got to do a bear hunt with him this year, and it was pretty darn cool. So I'm really hoping that works out. But man, the area that I hunt in North Dakota, I've hunted up there on a guy's ground here the last couple of years that only allows bow hunting, big ranch there, and has quite a bit of public land in the area too. And it's just a cool spot in Southwest North Dakota, right on the Little Missouri River. And for folks that don't realize that country exists, it's kind of big badlands and breakish country mixed together right there on the Little Missouri. And it is such a cool spot in America. I was telling somebody the other day, in one set last fall, we saw whitetail deer, mule deer, antelope, elk. We had two just monster bull elk come cruising by, of course, within bow range. And, I don't have a North Dakota elk tag, but then also a bighorn sheep,
Wow,
and so,
that's cool.
Yeah. And like, where else do you get to do that? You definitely don't really expect to see them there. But it's big country, and it's just beautiful. And there's a lot of history. Custer and his men used to come through that area quite a bit. And so they find a lot of artifacts from, the Civil War era, or the I should say settlers or pioneer era there. Either way, you want to look at that, but it's just a really neat area, and you disappear. I mean, there's only a house every 10 miles kind of thing. And so you're kind of getting out into some of that big open country. So I really look forward to going out there. It's just a neat place. But yeah, I'd say probably that hunt. South Dakota has a special place in my heart too. I've taken my biggest mule deer out there, and should have taken my biggest one again out there last year, and just had an unfortunate situation that occurred there, and we couldn't find him. And so just cool places, man. I love to hunt those big open areas, spot and stock on the ground with my bow, with deer, whether it be mule deer or whitetail. And I think it kind of epitomizes what bow hunting is. And I have a hard time getting away from those two states. I really
That's
do.
cool. Yeah. Yep. You mentioned something there, the spot and stock. It's, for Western hunters and blacktail mule deer, that's just part of life. Mm-hmm. And then you talk to whitetail guys, and man, what? You would get out of your tree stand? I'm like, there's sagebrush. There ain't a tree within 30 miles of that place.
Right. Yeah.
And then it's just, for a lot of them, it's so foreign, because they don't even, like, in a lot of places, and I'm not saying nobody does it, but the percentage is so low that in a lot of places they don't even consider it. Like, they see a buck at 200 yards and nobody thinks about going after it. They just think, wow, I hope it comes by me tomorrow. It's such a different mentality that you see on the West. You're like, oh man, that mule deer is going to migrate 300 miles this year. So if I want a chance at him, it's now, or it's potentially never.
Yeah. Yeah. I just like that mano a mano, and I grew up a very competitive individual, was involved in different activities and athletics. And I kind of feel like that's the extension of that in my life and what I do in hunting, is that, you prepare for it all year long. You make sure that you're shooting your bow. You make sure that you've got the right gear, from the kind of boots that you're wearing to the kind of clothes that you're wearing, even the hat or stocking cap that you're wearing, the kind of optics that you're using. Like, that's what we geek out about for 9 months of the year or 8 months of the year until bow season lands. And so I've really learned to appreciate that spot and stock style, because you really can put all your gear to the test, and you put your skills to the test in most cases. And I wouldn't take anything away from bow hunters that sit in a tree 20 feet high,
Right.
because it's a chess match, and you put a lot of time in, and you really have to understand your animals and what you're doing, and your landscape, your environment, your ecosystem. And that's a game in itself, which I also thoroughly enjoy playing. But
Yeah.
for me, man, I like getting on the ground level, and going one-on-one with those big deer and mature deer, and seeing how they engage and interact. And it's a neat feeling, man. It really is.
It is. Yeah. And it's different. And once again, I'm not taking anything away, like you say, not taking anything away from ambush predators. I like that. I hunt elk a lot out of ground blinds and tree stands. So I totally get that. And I had antelope tag in Oregon this year for the first time in a decade or more. And man, I spent some 16-hour days out in the desert in ground blinds, and you have to be dedicated to do that. And as soon as I thought there, I was like, you know what, maybe I should get out of here. Maybe I should just, glass something up and go spot and stock. And then all of a sudden you realize, no, because they can see me at like a mile away, and I'm not a mile sneaky. Like, I'm the last 200 yards sneaky. I'm not a mile sneaky.
Yeah.
And I'm too old to really belly crawl anymore. I used to belly crawl to like for anything, like shoot mergansers on the river, whatever. And now I'm just like, nah, I'm good. So
I'll tell you, man, I like that October 21st and earlier belly crawl. I ran, head to head with a rattlesnake in western South Dakota here. It's been 5 or 6 years ago. And man, before that ever happened, I was good. I didn't think about it. I just did it. I hadn't had that encounter yet. And now every time I start to think about it, I can't get it out of my head, And so it's funny. Somebody will talk about hunting somewhere in a location or region there out west where you could potentially experience rattlesnakes. And the first thought that comes to my mind is like, man, I don't know. 70 degrees, 80 degrees, rattlesnakes in my face. I don't know. I can really talk myself into it.
Yeah. And antelope hunting, man, you pray for 80 degrees because you're out there when it's 96 and 103 and in the little sweat lodge, they call it ground blind.
Black blind. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. And so it's, not only that, once again, I'm not so much, I don't like snakes. I do not like snakes at all. So snakes bother me, but man, it's like everywhere out there. It's rocky. It's thorny. I mean, this year I got my antelope and, I kicked some weeds to the side so I could sit down next to it. And literally, even when I had gloves on, I still put my hand down right in these, they look completely inert. And then they're like stabbing. It's like, how in the hell did I just put my hand in a whole, mess of these nasty barbed things? So,
yeah, those are no fun.
Yeah. Well, Laden, what's the next thing you got coming up? I mean, what should we look for next episode, next issue?
Yeah. Well, we got a couple things coming up. I guess issue wise, we've got our November issue. This is going to be hitting very soon. This is North American Whitetail. And
nice.
I don't know if people have noticed, but Haynes and Blake and Dale, the whole team's been working and Rob, our creative director, to really, like we were talking about, turning that page, a more aggressive and modern look to the brand and our logos, and at the same time sticking true to that running deer silhouette that is really, if you had to give American Whitetail a logo, it's it. And so we're doing a lot of things, but man, this is going to be a great issue. It's packed full of big deer, from bow-killed deer from Michigan to Kentucky to Ohio. And it's just, it's an outstanding, if you want to see big non-typicals, this is probably our non-typical issue of the year. So that's coming right around the corner. It'll be on newsstands shortly. Man, we've got season 19 of North American Whitetail. We're just starting the second half of all of our originals on Sportsman's Channel right now. So there's a fresh one this week that's starting here for Q4, and we'll roll out the rest of Q4. I'm trying to think what else. Breaking news bucks. This is the time of year, man. If you're one of those guys that loves to see the latest and greatest when it comes to big deer that have just been taken, Go to North American Whitetails website, go to our Instagram, go to our Facebook, make sure that you're following us or subscribing, and make sure that you're paying attention, turn your notification on so that we hit your feed immediately, because we're stacking out 2, 3, maybe even 5 a week right now, just depending on how they're tagged. And so you'll see, like I said, man, there's a great big Missouri deer that was just taken in the last 2 or 3 days, and it's floating around the internet a little bit. I'd encourage you to go check it out. If you haven't checked out Real Trees Instagram feed, they just put a post up on it yesterday. The guys at Respect the Game TV put a post up on it because it's a brother of one of the producers there on the show, and
nice.
Good people. It's going to be one that we're all going to be talking about for sure, and potentially the biggest deer of the year. Already. So we've got that rolling, man. And, just pay attention to everything that's going on at NAW, and can't thank everybody out there enough for continuing to support this brand in the way that they do, and thanking, organizations and partners like Pope and Young, because you guys are a vital part of who we are as bow hunters at North American Whitetail, just individually, but also, you're a big part of what we do with every issue of North American Whitetail and everything that we put out on our website or social feeds, because everything that's bow taken, you guys are the scoring resource for it. And we try to work as close as we can with you to promote not only the organization and what you guys are doing as utilizing yourselves, to be a part of the biennial here this last year, and to see, I guess I would call it page turning and modernization for the club yourselves. You get super active. You're inclusive. You're trying to invite everybody in, even if they aren't a bow hunter, and just come be a part of the organization and the community. And so, we're really thankful to be partners with you guys and celebrate what you're doing, and just say thank you for what you're doing.
Awesome. Well, no, it's a good partnership, and we're glad to have you on board. We're happy to see you in Reno last year, and you gonna make it again this year or next 23. Okay.
I just got my invite via email, I think 2 weeks ago. Is that right?
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I just did in my email. It was 2 weeks ago. It came up. And so we were talking about that. We'll for sure be there. Personally, I want to be there. I had such a great time with, the whole crew that's there, everybody that comes in. And, I know as a young man, I used to look at Pope and Young and think that it was more of kind of a boys club in some regards. And sure it was. That's kind of what makes it neat, but in some regards, but at the same time, like, man, what a great organization. And I would tell anybody out there, don't be intimidated by it. And the second you walk into that biennial, you're going to see that everybody there is just like you. If you're a hunter, and a hunter, and
approachable.
Approachable. Yep. So I would encourage everybody, and I'm sure everybody that's listening here already knows that, but anybody beyond the Pope and Young Club or listeners here, man, hey, take the time to call your local scorer, have a conversation with them, let them score your deer. Take the time to hop on the website and check it out, and understand who's involved, and, how many people that you probably wouldn't think of, guys like Donnie Vincent or, a Danny Ferris of the Hoyt Bow Hunting Podcast, Bowhunter TV,
good friend.
Yeah, man, everybody that's involved. There's a lot of good people here that have been involved and also have, a spot in their soul for the organization, what you guys are doing. So,
yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, last question here, Laden. Mm-hmm. We ask every guest, when you're out in the woods, whether you're chasing, elk at 11,000 feet or whitetails in the backwoods there on your lease, what is one piece of and I know you're in the industry and you're testing out all kinds of gear. So I can't wait for your answer. What is one piece of kind of non-traditional gear that you find in your pack every time you hit the woods?
Oh man, non-traditional gear. Well, I've got, I guess everybody kind of has their little good luck charms, and I've got 3 little boys, and a couple years ago, 3 years ago, they got me for Father's Day, a little book that's no bigger than that big. And it's about 40 pages of little things that the 3 of them went in and wrote, like, hey, what's your favorite thing about Dad? What's he look like? What is he, kind of thing. And, I think sometimes we get out there, especially doing what we're doing, where we're kind of grinding it out, and, our hobby has kind of become a job, fortunately. But it has become a job sometimes. And, just like any occupation, you have your tough days. But anytime I start thinking silly about things, I just kind of pull that thing out and go through a couple of 3 or 4 or 5 pages, and it's my little good luck charm. So I really enjoy that.
See, Dylan, we could do a whole podcast just on good luck stuff, because I believe in like sometimes I was hunting with some guys and I was like, all right, man, it's been a few days. We're not seeing elk. We're not hearing elk. I was like, all right, it's Fresh Hat Friday. And they're like, dude, it's Tuesday. I'm like, yep.
Yep.
Fresh Hat Friday, man. We ain't waiting until Friday to change it up. I said, everybody in camp today is wearing a different hat. Whatever hat you've been wearing, leave that in your tent. Let's take something else. And, I'll be darned if we didn't start getting into animals that day. So it's interesting. And sometimes you just got to shake it up. And sometimes it has nothing to do with that, but it just makes you feel better. I loaned a hat to a guy this year and Duke went out and shot his first elk ever with a bow, wearing this hat. And it was, one of those things where you cannot tell him to this day. In fact, he just called me the other day. You can't tell him to this day that that's not a lucky hat. In his mind, it is. So, but anyway, well, Laden, hey man, thanks for all you're doing for, bow hunting. Obviously, you're a good ambassador for the sport. We appreciate your support, and man, keep doing what you're doing. It's exciting to see all those big bucks and what you guys are doing over at North American Whitetails. So, thanks for being part of us.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Dylan. Appreciate you having me on and letting me talk a little bit about the brand and anything we can do to help you. And all you listeners out there, man, if you have the opportunity to harvest that whitetail of a lifetime, please do us a favor, shoot us a note on it. We want to celebrate the deer and celebrate, your hunting story as well, and work with Pope and Young to make sure that you get it officially scored and officially in the record books.
Yeah. Now, do you guys have a fork and horn section? Or I guess that'd be like a 4 to 6 point. Do you have a 6 point section?
We can do a world record 6 point. There's no doubt about that. I think it's worth. I don't know that we've officially established that category, but definitely, I'm with you there, man. Like we talked about that early. Nothing better than a big old 6 pointer, in my opinion. So
yeah, and maybe not even necessarily big, just like something more manageable.
Yeah. That's right, man.
Yeah, I had a buddy. He shot a fork and horn muley, and it wasn't very big, but he was meat hunting, and he says, "See, man," he said, "a lot of these guys, they can't fit their deer horns in the cooler."
Yeah,
and I'm like, "Well, you can with plenty of room to spare, big guy."
Yeah, so, I've got a buddy like to say you can't eat the horns.
So,
sure.
All right. Well, Laden, thanks a bunch, man. Appreciate you being here. Good luck out there this fall.
All right. We'll see you. Good luck to you guys too.
Yeah. See you in Reno.